part of the problem is that building a business and making money is good to a certain degree, but yeah, you take someone who's working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, well, that is where he's now become to idol and worship this thing that used to be good, and it's actually effectively become like a demon or an idol in his life.
Yesterday we were talking about giving lip service to the things you honor most. Like, oh yeah, I love God, he's the number one in my life. Like, we've all heard that before, but then bro, look at the way you're living.
Shouldn't be seeing you at the club.
It speaks differently. So it's not just as much as saying that. It's not just as much as saying like, I love my wife and my kids and the reason I'm trying to stack cash is for them. Because you can be lying. It's easy to lose track when you have some good, especially some good like money, that's when you have an income, something that's multiplying, something that's growing. There's a lot of excitement to get caught up in that. But the reality is like, bro, you could be dead tomorrow. Make sure you're living your life as if it was your last day. So make sure you're living your life with God as number one and that money being completely irrelevant. You know, like you can't take that bank account to heaven.
All right. Welcome to the Fit for the Kingdom podcast, episode 26. We're hitting you with another Kingdom Patrons Q&A. So we've got some good questions lined up for today. We had two questions come in. So one was from Paul, and he was basically asking, is competitive sports halal or haram? So basically saying competitive martial arts, is that something that as Catholics we're allowed to do? So I thought we'd just give our 2 cents on the matter. I don't know if the church has any definitive teaching on it. Like I know reading about this movement back in the 1800s called the Muscular Christians. They had like Christian boxing clubs, and it was a great way. I think it was like in an American city where the young men would tend to join gangs and stuff. So having like a Catholic or Christian
redirection of the bad desire.
Yeah, exactly. It would allow them to kind of be physical and violent, but in an ordered, controlled way.
Like on the first crusade when the Pope literally called all like there was heaps of pillaging and stuff going on in Europe.
Dang.
He practically like summoned all of them to go and retake the Holy Land. So it was like, okay, we've got a whole, but he promised them, I'm pretty sure he promised them like an indulgence or something. Or,
right.
Like a forgiveness of their sins by going on the crusade. But it's the same thing, like, the redirect, redirection of that desire to something good. But yeah, I think martial arts, well, to put it out there and make it clear, martial arts is a good thing. That's not what Paul's asking, but there's heaps of people that kind of be like, is it allowed as a Catholic to train martial arts? And it's like, yes, you almost have a duty to be able to defend whatever is under your responsibility, whether that's yourself or also your family, your mum and dad, your siblings, your kids. So like learning to fight and learning martial arts is a good thing. Where the question comes is like, okay, if you're to put that into a competitive scenario and where you're kind of signing up to a competition in which you practically have to try and beat the crap out of the other person or try and
knock him out
or submit him or choke him out, whatever it may be. Like, are you intentionally causing harm to another person? Are you are you essentially doing something that's not that Christian? And I think there's I personally don't know exactly where I stand. I do see where the question comes from, and that there, like, personally, I wouldn't want to be getting the one bashed up or having to bash up another person for a competition. One thing is like for defending yourself.
Yeah.
But then naturally the fruition of training that sport is that you kind of use it to maintain it. So it's like I see like a jiu-jitsu competition or something like that as like a natural way in which the sport kind of expresses itself, and then where the training you've been in gets refined and used and tested, and it's not generally in like in a lethal way, like most jiu-jitsu tournaments or whatever is like till tap out or whatever.
Yeah.
Another thing could be the UFC, where they're literally bashing the crap out of each other and you end up with brain damage
Yeah.
or a lot of different problems.
I think that's definitely where the difference lies. Like if you look at judo, for example, like their shoulder, I think their shoulder has to touch the ground and then it's counted as like a throw or a point. Or jiu-jitsu, where you submit someone, I feel like that's way more natural. Like, okay, theoretically with the same jiu-jitsu maneuver or the same jiu-jitsu choke, like you could kill someone or put someone to sleep, which you might have to do in like a real life scenario, but we can exercise that to the exact same peak, 100% intensity, but instead of actually fully choking out the guy, he submits because he knows that that's what would happen. So that's where it's like a good, wholesome expression in a competitive environment that doesn't cause damage to the other person. Like, I don't know, I've never been like a huge UFC fan. Like, I definitely find it interesting to watch and stuff, but I don't know if you imagine you had two fathers of children and they're going into the ring, and one of those dudes that literally has kids would have like a permanent brain injury or trauma, or he freaking gets like a black eye or munts his jaw, like, and then that guy would still have to go to mass on Sunday and would still have to go back to his wife and kids and set a Christ-like example of being a leader.
Yeah.
It's like, how congruent is that? And I know there's heaps of Christian UFC fighters, so like I'm not going to go as far to say as it's like evil or not allowed, but yeah, I guess from my perspective, there's definitely like a bit of incongruence when you take it to that level.
Yeah, like imagine being the kids and your dad gets home and he's like all bashed up. You know, like that's just not a nice thing to see. And you could say that UFC, it's mixed martial arts and it's an expression of all these martial arts. The way a jiu-jitsu or a judo competition would be expressed. It's just the nature of the sport is a little bit more aggressive. But I mean, in that way you can't really rule it off. But with martial arts, like you're training martial arts to be good at a skill, to kind of learn self-defense. But now so you're signing up and getting with the potential of getting like fully bashed up. I think that's way more extreme. I think another aspect that kind of adds to the problem, like the problematic side of martial arts, is the disposition one has in those things, and I think that's kind of where the biggest danger lies. Like, I think we're using UFC as an example because it's like probably the most popular. That you have guys in pre-fight and they literally hate each other's guts and want to freaking kill this person. Like anger, like so much anger. Like in a sense, it's like a bunch of sin that's just accumulating and
For sure.
given a release inside of that octagon for however long that fight lasts. And that's seriously dangerous, and that's not what martial arts should be used for at all. And I'd go as far to say that that's sinful.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't be acting on your anger like that. You shouldn't be harboring hate and evil in that way. And so as a Christian that may be doing these martial arts well and as an expression of the thing that you've been training, you're hopping in that ring with someone that could potentially hate you and that wants to kill you or not. You know, like you're just on kind of risky ground. Would you agree with that?
I think so, yeah.
And it goes in to say, like, with your like that point on incongruence as a Christian man, it's just like, like one thing is doing something that's not bad, another thing is doing the great, the good, the virtuous, whatever. Like, I guess that's your choice, and it's on your conscience of how far you go with that and the sort of situation you're stepping in. But I think it's also naive to assume that the majority of the fights that you're stepping into are people that have the same desires and intention as you.
Yeah.
And that's where the danger of martial arts is. So, like training and stuff, it's obviously totally fine. When you get to competition, you just need to be a lot more careful because, from all sides there's problems. Maybe in the ideal it can be all right.
I definitely think training martial arts is unequivocally good. Like, I see absolutely nothing wrong. Like, I would do it more myself if possible. I would, like, I was joking that I'll sign up my kids to jiu-jitsu at like 3 or 4 years old. But yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference between becoming really, really good at like jiu-jitsu or judo, or even like, I don't really know the other ones, like taekwondo or striking, which can be done and is a good thing to know how to do and to be proficient at, to a blood sport. Like, I feel like there's a huge gap between those that you definitely sort of need to justify and think very carefully if you are going to go cross that.
Yeah. And look at the state of life you're in. I think a perfect example was what you used about being a father.
Yeah.
Like if you're going into the ring to bash up another father, or you're
Yeah.
getting bashed up as a father and you have kids or whatever, like imagine if a priest went for
Yeah,
UFC.
it would be scandalous.
It'd
basically.
be super scandalous because like he's meant to be a figure of strength and of leadership, and he's going and practically putting his strength and leadership
on the line
because he could get fully destroyed. He could get killed. These fighters get killed just by being hit.
Yeah.
Like in a bad spot or whatever, like in the back of the head. So there's a fine line. I probably would say like just don't go into it professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call it like outright evil, but yeah, I think that's up for you, the listeners, to decide. There might be some teaching of the church, and I'm sure it's something that's been discussed multiple times, but even if you're not competing, just train it, because that's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And even compete with your mates, like just go and fit for the kingdom, doing St. Michael's Troops. A lot of the time it's martial arts. Sydney chapter has their own martial arts group.
Yeah,
they go
train
and spar
every week.
and train every week on Saturday. So, like, there are healthy expressions of this sport in which you can be fighting with people that have the same intention and disposition towards it and aren't willing to freaking kill you during the fight. So, yeah, that would be probably a way to summarize the question.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. Right, next question from Tyrone. If you're ambitious and motivated and love your business/career, how do you make sure it doesn't become an idol or being motivated to just stack heaps of cash? Where's the line / how to navigate this?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the gym question on like how to stop the gym from being an idol.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, primarily it's a matter of responsibilities and priorities. Like, what are you setting first in your life? How much at the forefront of your life is your business? What are you setting it above? How much time are you giving it? Because it's not just like, yesterday we were talking about giving lip service to the things you honor most.
Yeah.
Like, I love God. He's the number one in my life. Like, we've all heard that before. But then, bro, look at the way you're living.
Shouldn't be seeing you at the club.
It speaks differently. So it's not just as much as saying that. It's not just as much as saying, like, I love my wife and my kids, and the reason I'm trying to stack cash is for them. Because, you can be lying. Your actions speak louder than your words is a classic saying. So
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we were talking about maybe in the previous episode about like being tempted with goods. Like, part of the problem is that building a business and making money is good to a certain degree, but you take someone who's working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, that is where he's now become to idol and worship this thing that used to be good, and it's actually effectively become like a demon or an idol in his life. So I think while it is a good, our highest good is, I guess, knowledge and love and service of God. So where your business commitments start to compete into your prayer life, into your Sunday, into these things that should actually take priority above your business, then that's where I view it's an issue. Like, for example, like, there have been like a few days where I've kind of worked all day. Like, I've still perhaps prayed and gone to mass and stuff, but then you'll basically work the whole day. So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, but it would be contrary to our human nature and our nature as sons or daughters of God to spend like 16 hours of an entire day in work. Because I think that your work day should kind of imitate a whole week, where it's like you work for 6 days and then you have Sunday, which is for rest and worship. And I think that within each day, you should have like 12 to 14 hours of work, and there should be 2 hours, let's say roughly, or whatever.
Minimally,
Yeah, that should be towards prayer and leisure, where it's like that mini Sunday within each day where you're spending time with God, spending time with yourself, spending time with your family, and just sort of resting and renewing and then going to sleep. So I think if you're sacrificing that time, it would kind of be similar to also sacrificing your Sunday. Obviously during the week you push a lot harder, but I think there still needs to be a balance within that. And I guess part of the problem, it's the same with the gym, is that as guys, we're very result oriented. So like we have a business or we're making money or we see money coming into the bank, and I think it's like a very normal and natural tendency to get like hyper obsessed on that. So I think that's an awareness that you have to bring in and say, while I should be pushing hard, while I should be making money and I should be saving money, that ultimately this isn't my primary purpose as a son of God.
Yeah.
It's just really not. It's a purpose. It's one of my primary purposes, in fact, but it's not number one.
Yeah.
And you really just have to spend time thinking about that. It's like what you said. Am I paying lip service to God and my family, and I've actually got my business as number one? Or am I actually taking actions and steps and taking time aside to make sure that my business doesn't dominate my life? So there's like a physical side of it where you've got to compartmentalize the business. But then more importantly, there's really that interior thing where it's like you need to avoid being attached to the business or to the results, or people will just get super anxious and stressed, and it's their whole life that they've got to be making money, or I'm not making enough money. And like you can tell mentally that their whole thinking is basically on money and on the business.
Yeah, and on money and on the business, while their family or their devotion to God, their devotion to going to daily mass or whatever gets sidelined, even though they still do them. Like, I think that's a key point.
Yeah.
Because you can keep up your responsibilities to your family and to your spiritual life and whatever else, while idolizing something, while idolizing the business or whatever. So I think a key point to add on to what you said is Ignatian's term of indifference. Like where you have two goods, and whatever you're fully indifferent between the two. Like whatever God wills for you, you would accept. To the extent where one could be like completely opposed to maybe your natural desires, but you'd still willingly take it on. And so it's just like, with a business, with money, it's like, would you be just as happy to not have this income, to not have this business?
Right.
And to be giving yourself to your primary vocation. So obviously the prerequisite to indifference is that you have your priorities.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that challenges me a lot, because when I look at what I'm doing in my life and the discernment of the goods that are in my life, and I try and apply the concept of indifference, a lot of times
you'll notice an attachment.
These small attachments that I've built are like tugging at the heartstrings. Like, crap, I'm kind of afraid to give this up. Like, I want to be indifferent, but I don't actually know what I would do if I was to give that up. And like, I think with money, that's a massive thing for people. Like, what if you were called to give up like these 10 hours of work towards your business? Like, would you be like struggling, or would you be like, okay, like I'm happy to live off a smaller salary, working a smaller job, like I'm giving 100% to I don't know.
Yeah, if that's what God's calling you to. Yeah.
It's a bit of a silly example, but it depends on the responsibilities you have. But you look at people like St. John Vianney, who just priests that have given themselves completely to serving God in the confessional.
St. Alphonsus Liguori, like he gave up like a massive career.
He was a full-on lawyer, 2 doctorates.
Yeah.
Like if God called you to give it up, would you let go just like that? I think that's a key point. I also like the idea of thinking long-term sustainability. Like, is the amount of time and thought that I'm giving to my business, if you add it up over like a period of 50 years, adequate or inadequate? Like, how much time am I giving to my family? How much time am I giving to God? How much time am I giving to my business? If I was to to multiply this for the rest of my life, like, am I gonna look back and be like, man, I wish I'd given more time to my business? Or am I saying I've given too much, or I've been way too invested? Because it's easy to lose track when you have some good, especially some good like money that's like when you have an income, something that's multiplying, something that's growing. There's a lot of excitement to get caught up in that. But the reality is, like, bro, you could be dead tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you're living your life as if it was your last day. So make sure you're living your life with God as number one, and that money being completely irrelevant. You know, like, you can't take that bank account to heaven.
Yeah. It's really tough because people will talk about all the time, well, there's different seasons in life, which I definitely agree with. Like, in your 20s, you're probably going to work, or you should be working harder than you would be as like a 40-year-old dude with kids. So there's definitely an aspect of that.
Balance, yeah.
But even when you're freaking nose to the grindstone in your 20s, you should not be prioritizing your business above God. Like, okay, cool, you're working 14 hours a day, not a problem. How many hours are you spending in prayer? Or are you still looking after yourself physically? Because if suddenly the whole situation is, okay, cool, well, I'm in like the founding phase or the grind phase, and I've also thrown my prayer and gym routine out the window, well, there's a huge disorder now. This wasn't just about taking this season to go really hard. That is what you're doing, but you've actually pushed that too far.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that long-term sustainability is a good idea. Maybe it's like a 2-year sustainability.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna freaking work my ass off and work 6 days a week and work 12-hour days. But given that, or like having that in mind, I also need to make sure that my fundamentals and my number one priorities are also being addressed.
Yeah, it is a little bit of I guess a challenge that I think about this idea of seasons of life, because it's kind of assuming that you do have
Time. Yeah.
And you can be kind of stupid with it and be like, you don't know how much time you have, so then you never actually make long-term investments, which a lot of the time is what you have to do with a business. Like, you have to kind of bank on the fact that, okay, this is going to be a 5-year project at least, or whatever. But then you get the people that do make that seasonal investment of like, okay, I'm going to put my head down for this, to the neglect of kind of some fundamental pillars. Like, you might be giving that hour of prayer to God and that 2 hours to your family, whatever, but I see things like, okay, you're working 14-hour days, but your neighbor is something that doesn't even exist on your mind.
Yeah.
Like, your duty to serve the church and to be present and to lead as a man or whatever, you know, like, I think more and more commonly we have people that are focusing so much on themselves that they forget to give. And you can base that off a seasonal thing, but it's just like, bro, it's like for us with the altar serving, like, the time for these kids to be impacted and to grow and to have good example is not from like a 40-year-old guy that's grown his business and that might now have time. Sometimes it's that 20-year-old guy that could be knuckling down but is giving up those 2 or 3 hours a day to help these kids or whatever. So it's just like, that's a specific example, but my point kind of lies in that we may be in a season where we need to lock in an intentional period of complete devotion to this thing, but when we do live off that assumption that we do have a longer period of time, I think we can be throwing opportunities at the wayside that we might not have, and that I would say probably more fundamental to getting yourself to heaven, that growing that business, that then, like, I don't know, you could say, I'm growing this business to get a good income that will then feed my family, but it's like, I kind of don't think that should be sacrificing some of the evangelical calls that we have.
Yeah. Love of God and love of neighbor, the two most important commandments. I guess it's very easy to think, like, for example, with the altar serving or teaching Bible in schools or whatever one of these projects that, I guess, on the surface level, it seems like you're not quite wasting your time, but sometimes it feels like, man, like, it's just countless hours that have gone down the drain. I imagine teachers probably feel this a lot, that you're just not really seeing return on investment in terms of the time that's spent, but you're not storing treasures on earth. Like, ultimately, that thing that you said to the kid or that example that he saw may go on to, like, profoundly impact his life, and what you might have seen as a waste of time or not part of your season might have now led the soul to, like, never receive the help or love that it needed in that specific moment. So I guess I'd agree with you in the sense that, let's say we grant this idea of a season, that doesn't supersede your commitment to prayer I guess, looking after yourself physically, but definitely love of neighbor. And not just, you know, okay, I'll call him for a few minutes or I'll see how he's going, but like genuine self-sacrificial love of neighbor. I think that's where the love of neighbor gets people. Like everyone's happy to love the neighbor provided it comes at no cost to themselves.
Fits in their schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like most of the time it's not going to, and that's, you have to freaking suck up. You're gonna lose hours of sleep. You're gonna feel like shit because you've been super tired from the weekend. You're going to have to give in this way. And that's, you know, those who gain their life will lose it, and those who lose their life will gain it. Like, it literally purely comes down to, like, you lose your life. Like, this isn't about things that are expedient or things that have good return on investment. Like, at the end of the day, it's not about that.
The spiritual life is not a freaking business. It's just a complete laying down of one's life for God. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think me personally, I like to think long term, which is why I make these analogies. But say you do get to the final judgment, and in a sense you had a choice. Like, okay, I could have had this business and built up this money or whatever for all these different purposes that might be good purposes, or I could have like kind of settled for $100K a year because like you can realistically push for that pretty sensibly, and given all this time to helping different people and just lived maybe not like the most comfortable life because you are having to work constantly just to feed the family, whatever, to put bread on the table, but then you've been able to give of yourself so much more fully. Like, you get to the final judgment, like I'd much rather choose that second choice in which it's going to be more of a toil. It's probably not going to be as comfortable.
Yeah.
My work isn't going to give me as much freedom as it could, having my own business or having, you know, like having created a bloody, what's it called, generational
wealth or
wealth. Yeah. Like what's your decision being based off? And for me, it becomes clearer the longer term the more long term I look at the decision, because in the instant moment, it's like that comfort or like this good thing is tempting and it seems not that much of a sacrifice. Like, look, in 2 years' time, I will be able to free myself up for this, but it's just like, well, if I apply that concept for good, that's...
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, it's just not that safe.
Yeah, I'd say that sums it up pretty well. I guess I'll add like a footnote, because I think the opposite side of the argument is that people can take what we just said, well, love of God and love of neighbor is primary, and then they'll take that and they'll never push hard in their job or their career and their business, which is like the opposite side of the puzzle. You have people that idolize the business, and then you'll have people that idolize, let's say, leisure or serving neighbor to the detriment. It's like, well, you might not have had to slave up and like build a whole business, but actually if you did work a little bit harder or pay a bit more attention to your career, you could have increased your freedom and income without really compromising on everything else. So I think it's that balance where it's like, for a lot of people, I'm not going to say everyone, but definitely for a lot of people, you probably can afford to push a bit harder without compromising either, if that makes sense. Yeah. The extreme is people who will live and die for their business, and the other extreme is like, we all know people that just socialize way too much and they just never lock in. But there is actually a balance where you can push both things very hard and be integrated and, you know, not be idolizing either one.
Yeah. I also wouldn't be so quick. Like, I think the arguments I've been making push more to the fact of like, give less investment to a business for the sake of of following God's call to give to others. But there's many examples of people that have found themselves being very wealthy or having a very large business or very successful, that have done great things for the church, and given lots of money, or have that freedom to then, you know, like to impact in great ways because of the opportunity they've created for themselves. And so I think largely it goes down to a matter of discernment. Like, talk to your spiritual fathers, your family around you, have a look at your desires, you know, take it to prayer, have time in silence where you actually reflect upon the intentions, upon the desires you're kind of acting upon. There's a lot of things that go into it. So I wouldn't just write out like, yeah, you should never have like put all your time and energy into starting a business or whatever. Obviously, the fundamental still stands. You need to be given sufficient to your primary vocation, to your marriage or whatever you do. To primary vocation being your seeking of the kingdom of God, holiness, but yeah, not just to the point where you don't neglect them, but also to where they're growing, and then everything else can follow line. But
yeah,
I don't know if that nuances it all, but
no, I definitely agree. I'd say do a time audit. Like, if you've gone a whole month and you've spent 30 or 1 hour spending intentional time with people, like, there's obviously a problem. Like, just literally just take an honest look. What am I spending every single hour of each day doing? And that'll pretty quickly show you if there's issues or if there's imbalances. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. So that was a Kingdom Patrons Q&A. So again, if you want to join the patrons and ask some questions, it's basically a group of guys who are donating about 2 coffees a week, probably less than 2 coffees because you'll get charged like $8 for microplastics and fluoride nowadays. But yeah, basically equivalent of 2 coffees, donate to the cause, support the mission, support the events, the marketing, the podcast. All of these things require time and energy and money to get moving. So we really appreciate those men's contribution, and we invite you to consider supporting us and joining us on the front line too. A free way to support us is to subscribe on the social media platforms, leave us a rating, leave us a comment, just pump it up so the algorithm shares it to more people. And definitely any questions that you have, comments, topic suggestions, guests, leave that in the comments as well, and we'll get back to you. If you're not already following us, please do. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, Spotify, of course. You can follow myself on Instagram and YouTube as well. I have a bit shorter of a podcast, which I upload pretty regularly too, breaking down similar topics to this. Nico's not on social media, so you won't be able to follow him. But yeah, that's pretty much all we have for you guys. Keep hammering, and God bless.